Welcome to Lift Your Future, a podcast that teaches you coping skills through stories, methods, and proven techniques to improve relationships and outcomes in your personal and professional life. I'm Nicole Winkler, a licensed therapist and executive coach. On this podcast, we'll share relatable life experiences designed to help you grow. I will provide easy, practical ways to develop thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to impact your life, both personally and professionally. My goal is simple: to help you lift your future. Welcome to this episode of Lift Your Future. Today, we're going to talk about company and culture. We're going to talk about leadership, and we're going to talk about taking a big leap of faith in a goal that you have. Our guest today is Shawn Peterson. Well, welcome, Shawn. Thank you for being on Lift Your Future podcast today.
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
that you recently took a big leap to go out on your own as an entrepreneur. So I thought that you would have some excellent tips for our listeners about when to take that leap. How do you know when the time is right? What advice have you gotten over the years? And kind of go through your story.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Nikki. Happy birthday, by the way. Even though I know this will probably play at a later date, but
Thank you.
I don't think there is a perfect time to take the leap. I think the time is always now. One thing that I've really spent a lot of time discussing in the past few months with other entrepreneurs or people that want to become entrepreneurs is this concept that everything that I was afraid to give up, I ultimately gave up to do it anyways. So you know me a little bit, but I had other homes and boats and was doing trips, and I had a lot of fun things going on. And those were the things that actually in hindsight probably held me back from making the leap earlier. But ultimately I had to let go of all those things anyway. So all I had done is delayed the inevitable by not making the leap 4 or 5 years ago. But ultimately we're here today, and I'm happy that I've made it now.
Yeah. So can you speak a little bit more to kind of the sacrifice that's involved with making the decision to go out on your own?
Absolutely. I think that there's really nothing more rewarding than ultimately chasing your dreams, fulfilling a vision, and being satisfied when the day comes that you're no longer with us. And so with that, you have to be willing to put it all on the line. It's going to take more money, more hours, more energy, more connections than you probably ever thought it would to be successful. But I'll tell you, I'm having a blast with it, and I've been able to be really successful already in just a short period of time by going all in. And when I say that, I never sugarcoat it. I put it out there on social media all the time. I've had to cash out retirements, home equity, sell things, leave jobs that were paying what most people do really happy making, and move a couple of times. There's a lot that goes into it. But as it starts to come together, I don't think there's probably been many things in life that are more exciting than seeing a vision fulfilled and become a reality.
Well, because there's dreamers and there's doers. And I think Traction, the EO book Traction, says it best when they say, it's something to, a dream is a dream, but it's really a hallucination until you make it a reality. Yeah.
I would maybe take one little twist on that, which is I think everybody has a dream. I just think that there's certain dreamers that'll actually go after the dream. And so they get viewed as the visionaries, the entrepreneurs, if we're following EOS. And then there's doers. A lot of doers have a dream within them too, but they're just not confident enough to make that leap. Mm-hmm. And maybe they don't know how they would monetize that dream. But I've seen people be successful in many different areas and be able to have commerce, whether it's art, music, sales, therapy, coaching, mowing lawns. It really doesn't matter. There's probably a market if you're willing to put in the time and energy and work. That's where I feel like the piece falls for most people is 99% of human beings aren't willing to put in the work that it takes to be successful. I was watching an Elon Musk video recently, and he was talking about putting in 120-hour work weeks. Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about his story and how he's gotten to where he's at, it's pretty remarkable. But he's been willing to do things that, frankly, 99.99% of people just won't do to actually accomplish his goals and dreams.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what did you have to do to accomplish this dream? I know it's still early on. It's still early on for you, but already we've had conversations about, I'm so glad I did this. this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I did it last year, went out on my own. And so I'm still pretty fresh and new as well in the entrepreneurial world. But what have you had to do? What's the mindset that you've had to keep pushing on the days where it gets tough?
Well, philosophically, I think the key here is you have to raise your standards. So when you raise the standards of what you think you're worth, what you think your time's worth, the impact you want to bring to the world, that excitement and drive will pull you. And then it's about executing and having the discipline to do it day in and day out, even when you don't feel like it, which there's some days that you don't feel like it. And part of what I do to try to challenge myself is I did 607 workouts last year. My goal was 52 books. I fell short. I got 47 done. So I'm going to go for 52 again this year. But you have to start setting that mindset in all areas of your life, because you can't really be mediocre over here and then be excellent and elite over here. It just doesn't work that way. And so if you can start challenging yourself in any area of your life and begin to show your mind that you're someone that executes on what they say they're going to do, it starts to grow for you, and that confidence starts to grow. And so there's people that will talk about the concept of make your bed in the morning, brush your teeth, like you've already accomplished something. Some goal's been done. And those are obviously very small, but if you're not ready quite to make the leap, start setting a goal of, if I wanted to do a side hustle, how many hours a week would I set aside to actually make that come true? How many books will I read to become an expert in my side hustle? Whatever. If it's graphic design, it's graphic design. How many YouTube videos am I willing to watch? Am I willing to invest in a training course? What am I willing to do to put myself down that path so that someday I can have a business doing just graphic design if that's what somebody wanted to do? But most people want to go to work and work 40 hours. And I say work 40 hours. There's the water cooler time and all those other things that go into it. And then they get home and they don't want to invest the time. So there's a calculation that I'll use with people. There's 168 hours in a week. Let's say you slept 7, right? So now you're down to 119. If you spent 2 hours a day, really intense with your family, you put all devices away, you were very present, very focused, that'd be a lot for most people, and you get a lot accomplished. So that's another 14 off, so 105. You spend 2 hours a day eating, showering, working out, so you're at 91. If you then work for 40, again, work, and people can run a mile in 4 minutes, or they can run it in 10. So when we say work, that leaves 51 hours. So even if I gave myself 2 hours a day of that white space, like where did it go? There's about 35 to 40 hours a week for the average person that no one really knows what happened or where it went.
Yeah.
That's the difference between somebody that's a billionaire and somebody that's barely getting by and making $40,000, $50,000 a year.
And I love that you brought up the point of, like, we have time. That's one of my favorite things to say to people when they tell me I don't have time. It's like, you had time, but you chose to do something else with it. That's something I learned a long time ago, and try to remind myself of that too. What did I do with that last 15 minutes? What did I do with that last half an hour? Really? And if I didn't really accomplish anything, I'm not going to remember what I did with it. So I love that you brought that up. And then additionally, it's those small wins, those small victories. Like, hey, I'm not closing up shop and quitting my job tomorrow and opening my own business. What do I need to do to get there? And I read a quote this week recently, and it was, I butcher quotes and jokes. I butcher all the time, but it was something to the effect of, use your weekends, or not trying to escape from your work week, use your weekends to create your next work week or your side hustle or whatever it's going to be next. Why are we using our weekends to recover and recoup to go back on Monday and keep doing the same thing over and over again that we feel stagnant, bored, whatever that might be? Use it to improve yourself.
Yeah, so I think the quote is something like, instead of using the weekends to escape your life, use the weekends to create the life you want.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes. Yeah, and so that concept is there. The other thing is knowing your value time management. It's a concept I teach a lot with sales and with leaders, but really what that comes down to is, what am I supposed to be doing with my time and what's the value of that? And like a quick example is, you can only cut the expenses down to none, right? But you can make the top line in your business go to infinity, as high as you want. And so I know a lot of people that will mow their own lawn, something they could pay somebody, say $50 to do for that hour, or, well, maybe not your yard, but the rest of us, $50 for that hour. If you take that over the year, that's 52 hours. So it's like a week it's about, a week and a half worth of working hours that you could have gained. And the expense on that would have been somewhere around $2,500. Well, depending what you're doing, could have you made more than $2,500 if you had put that time and energy into something that could produce revenue? Mm-hmm. Now, if you start looking at all those little things that you do throughout sales, throughout business, throughout life, that just eat up your time, that's how you buy your time back. So you can buy your time back with softwares. You can buy your time back with outsourcing to other businesses. You can buy your time back with hiring employees. And that's how you create time. So there's a myth out there that we all have the same 24 hours. That's not really true, because somebody that has 100 employees also has 8 hours a day of their time. So they have 800 hours plus their 24. So they have 824 hours for the day. Mm-hmm. And that's how you continue to scale. And even if those people are only a 7 out of 10 on the scale of whatever you're really great at, but they're a 7 out of 10. If you took 100, you still added 70 net employees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know that's what you help businesses do, right? Is gain time back through AI, through people, through performance, leadership, all those things. So can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Quantum Business Solutions helps organizations systemize, optimize, and automate their people, processes, and technology around revenue growth. And so Hold on. How long did it take you to memorize that? Because I've heard you say that like many times now, and it is like on. How long did that take you to like define it, get it down? Because that's a lot. That's a lot to wrap my head around even. Yeah, so it took me probably about 5 minutes, but it's also my idea, so that's really not fair. But one of the key concepts in business, and then I'll get back to your question, that's made things so important is, are you role playing in your life to have the conversations with the employees? Are you role playing to have the sales conversations? In every organization that I've been a leader in, we literally have a daily development call. So there's two key components that are different with working with me versus anybody else. We write down our life goals, personal, professional, physical, financial, whatever it is, every single morning. The second piece is we have a daily development call every single morning. So we actually role play, like if it's sales, we're going to sit and role play just the opening of a call over and over and over again, not until we get it right, but until we're so good we never get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we end up knowing things like systemize, optimize, and automate your people, process, and technology around revenue growth. And then everyone goes, well, what does that mean? When you look at the overall revenue generation cycle, it's a little bit different than just sales. It's a little bit different than just marketing, because people usually break things into that. But as we continue to evolve with technology, more people have worked from home. The ability to have sales and marketing in alignment, but with data, with a great customer experience, with nurturing the opportunities, all comes together. And that's where we created the quantum growth model. So who are we targeting? How do we attract them? How do we nurture the opportunity? How do we convert them into a customer? And then how do we wow that customer to get repeat or referral business? Mm-hmm. And I can walk into an organization and usually within 5 or 10 minutes pick out a lot of things that would make a big impact. And nobody I found yet has had that entire revenue generation process actually mapped out. And so we help businesses create 10 times the sales productivity that they would otherwise have to eliminate the lack of funnel and slow revenue growth. Mm-hmm. One key component on that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. One key thing that I think is important too is the client fit. So we have a meeting called the Quantum Client Fit. I tell them the 3 reasons they won't do business with us right up front. And then I go right into our core values. If they don't match our core values, we're okay not doing an engagement with them. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go through our core values with every client and get their buy-in. And that helps because our core values are growth mindset, win-win, on and on. So that's very key when you're hiring people. And I think it's also very key when you're working with clients to be successful, is you have to be in alignment. And that starts with, what are your values?
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. With my clients, I share my philosophy about life and business, and how I'm not just going to talk about business. I'm not just going to talk about your life, because they ebb and flow and they intertwine so well together that if you work on one, the other one's going to be affected. And so wherever you want to start, we can start. But that's my philosophy. I think it's really important, because there are some people that say, well, I only want to work on business. Okay, well, if you only want to work on business, we can talk about that. But if you're not willing to be open to the fact that that will impact your life and your relationships and your parenting and all these things, then what are we really doing here? They're not separate, they're together.
Yeah, harmony. People talk about balance and then they talk about blend, and somebody said it best the other day, but harmony is what you're looking for, work-life harmony.
Exactly. So, okay, so you have employees now after starting recently. How do you get people to buy into your idea, to your business? Because this has been a seed that was planted and you've been watering it and it's growing. It's been growing and growing for many years. But how do you get other people? I think that that's a special kind of magic, to be able to have other people see your vision and then buy into that and say, okay, I'm going to go work here.
Well, first of all, you have to really care, and that's a key thing, right? So that's like a prerequisite. But the biggest thing that comes into play in our ability to recruit, and then I want to talk about this concept a little bit because I think it's important for other business owners and leaders to hear, but you have to understand the goals. So we actually have a hire to retire process that I've created. Goal setting is in the interview process. So I want to know their goals before they even work for me or work with us, because those are going to be the things that ultimately drive them. And if I can't correlate where they want to end up, where they are today, and if we're not somewhere on that path, because keep in mind, you're not going to keep most employees their entire career, but we should be somewhere on that path and authentically be able to help them. And again, back to the core values, so the win-win, growth mindset, willing to take a leap, which is like risk. But everyone that works for Quantum has an opportunity to make their life dreams come true. And what I mean by that, it's not just a cheesy line, is when I look at their goals and I look at what they want to do, I know exactly what they each want to accomplish. And we are on a path for them to be able to do that through Quantum, which when you talk about alignment, people go in the extra mile, people wanting to work extra hours, do all the things it takes to be really successful. That's only going to ultimately happen if it comes down to everybody's winning and everybody's going the same direction. So I can't be successful without them because I need the team. There's only certain skills and gifts that I have, but they also need the vehicle, or at least have chosen this vehicle to reach their dreams and goals too. So it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And when someone starts in an organization, there should be a mutual agreement that happens before you even start working there. And that's what helps you hold accountability. So when they come in and they're a week in, I'm able to say, hey, Nikki, wanted to sit down with you. Those are great goals you sent this morning. Let me ask you real quick, do you believe that everything you're doing today and the actions you're taking are going to help you accomplish those, or do we need to make some shifts here? And they'll recognize that that's way easier than to try to pound on somebody for what you want, because that's extremely difficult. So understanding what their goals are now, and then the next step is helping elevate those goals by getting them to believe in themselves. A lot of people just need someone to believe in them and tell them what they'd actually be capable of. They don't even know.
Yes,
and
like a cheerleader.
I think back early in my career, I didn't even really know what was possible. And so there's always somebody else that has a different vision of the world that can see things in you that you can barely see in yourself. And so why would you believe so much in other people but not in ourselves? And so that's like the second piece. And then when they get there, I just try to make them feel really special. So everybody that comes on board, one of the first thing that happens is they get to take out their spouse or a loved one friend to a celebratory dinner. I want them celebrating coming on board. I want this to be a big deal, because it is a big deal. And so that's something we do. We start out every single meeting with our core values. So those keep getting pounded home. We're sending our goals every single morning. So when it comes to team building, it comes to culture, it comes to being on the same page, we're able to do that with the best of them because of some of the triggers and some of the things that we have in place to make sure that happens.
And you know this from your years working in, organizations and businesses and developing yourself and then growing and developing teams. So can you speak to your journey as a leader, becoming a leader and believing in yourself enough to be on that path, because there had to be people along the way that believed in you?
Yeah. So one of the things I've been fortunate to have is a lot of different mentors, but I'll say the caveat to that is I also chased a lot of them down and went and found them. You've got to be willing to go ask somebody to have coffee or to be a mentor. And not everyone's going to stick, not everyone's going to fit, but some will. And successful people want to give back because they remember what it was like to not be where they are today. And so if they're really good people, a lot of times they'll get back to you. So that's key. But yeah, I really ended up in sales by accident. So just, I like transparency because it helps people feel better about where they're at in their journey. But, I started working when I was probably 12, and I would work on roofs and do all these things, working with my family's business with construction at that time. I've detasseled corn. I've been in storm sewers. Like, I've done all these things. So I knew I wanted to get in business. And my first job in business was in a call center when I was 19 or 20 years old. And I ended up becoming a manager there. And then that's when I really started getting excited about it. And so through that, and there'll be like a really key point to this story, but through that, I gained my first experience managing people. And this was like $9, $10 an hour employees and in a call center. So very challenging environment. And then I took a step back and ended up at a large credit card company and was in collections and did pretty well there and was making $20 an hour or so. We'll say, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was about that. And I had an internship opportunity, and I didn't have a mandatory internship for my major, but I had an internship opportunity in Sioux Falls at corporate headquarters, and I took it. So I took a step back in pay, right? And then I ended up meeting the CEO and the executive team of a multi-billion-dollar company. That helped me kind of learn from there, and that's where I started learning data analytics and some of the other things that go into running really successful businesses, which ends up helping me like all these years later now understanding data analytics. At the time, I didn't have any idea what any of that would be worth. I always wanted to be in marketing. Ended up at a marketing agency after like just going above and beyond. Like, that's one thing I could tell people always is going to get you ahead. Just like keep trying harder. If you do 20% more than everybody else, you're going to get 2-3 times the results.
Yes, it shows up.
And so I got this job at this marketing agency, and about 2.5 months in, they brought me into the office. Like, so how do you think this is going? And I'm like, it's fine. And they asked me if I liked the job. And anyways, I resigned. They fired me. I don't know. It was a mutual ending, we'll call it, which is really usually a firing, but it wasn't the right fit. And so I kind of started learning that concept. And they were nice about it. They paid me for like a month. I'd only been there for 2 months. I was like 22 years old. And then I ended up in sales for the first time on accident, selling newspapers, like ads in newspapers in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so had a really great time doing that and ended up ultimately in copier sales. And I won't get into the details of this organization a whole lot, but they went through several leaders in my first couple of years. And then I ended up making my own pay plan, my own business plan, etc. And because I had an offer from medical device for, we'll just say like $200,000 a year. And I had made $137,000, I think, my first year in sales selling copiers. First year as a VP of sales, I made $135,000. So if you take the money from what I was doing in sales, but really from where I could have been going, I chose to go into the leadership route. And then think of all the years until it took me to get to that in that position. It took me like 4 years probably to get up to that $200K in that role. And along the way, I ended up sitting there, and this goes back to sometimes people just need someone to believe in them. I was sitting there with a couple of buddies and said, man, I'd really like to have this consulting and coaching business. And one of them said, well, I'd hire you. So I went home and I thought, he would. I made my own little plan up and took him to lunch the next week, and he paid me. I probably wasn't very good at the time, but I still brought value. And I said, hey, man, I appreciate it. I've always been appreciative of this gentleman just for that. And he said, yeah, sometimes people just need someone to believe in them. So like all these little things stick, right? So far, like you're seeing me, I've taken steps back in pay from what I could have had 2 to 3 times already in this journey. And I'm not even close to where we're at today. But I kept sacrificing.
But you're honing leadership skills. And I've found in many organizations to get into leadership, you have to be passionate about it. When you're passionate about it, you care about it. You're not getting paid sometimes as much as the people that you're leading, but it shows, and it makes a huge impact on the team and the culture and the organization.
It's so big. And, you've got to have a vision. So I knew I wanted to be a CEO, and I knew med device probably wasn't the direction as much as this. So I did it, right? And then ultimately I wanted to make a decision to leave and start my own business. And I won't get into this a whole lot, but ended up going to North Dakota to run another copier dealership as a CEO for a period of time to help them kind of turn around some things they were going through. And then I had an opportunity to potentially owned some businesses is what we'll say. And I broke off and decided I wanted to chase my dreams. I wanted to live where I've always wanted to live. And so I just risked it all. And so if I look over the years, stay in my path, I'm not sure how you'd calculate this, but has probably cost me a few $1,000,000 already. Because if I had been making if I'd have been making another 70 grand 10 years ago or 8 years ago, and you keep parlaying that, right? And so now here I am, and again, back to everything that I've sacrificed to be here, but I have this opportunity where I always say I'd risk 500,000 for 500 million, but it's really about the journey and all the people you can impact along the way and all the positive influence. And I love what I do. So like last week I was talking at 9 o'clock at night, and I'd been working since 6:30 in the morning, so 14, 15 hours into the day. And I sounded just like I do right now. My behavioral energy was still this high. Like, it's hard to go to bed. You want to just keep going. And at other points in my career, I've been sitting there after 5 or 6 hours thinking, when do I get to go home?
Yes.
And so that's why you go through the path. That's why you go through the journey. That's why you take the pay cuts. Like, it's all building up to getting to living the life that you want to live. I know that was the long answer there, but it walked you kind of through the path that I took, I guess.
No, that's exactly what I wanted. So thank you for sharing that very much. And I think what you're also speaking to so much is authenticity, being who you really are. Where do you get your energy? And, having that for yourself, but then also as you hire employees, I hear that that's so important as well. I want to make sure that they are their most authentic selves. We are authentic. So if those two things are aligned, then the clients and the customers will come, and we're going to be in alignment, and everybody's going to be happy. That win-win mentality.
I think, so here's a thing that I think is really important to look at is when you talk about alignment, you talk about win-win and really truly doing the best thing for someone. We don't do any contracts. And the reason for that, I don't want clients and I don't want employees that are only with me because there's a nasty contract. And so that's something I believe in. At any point, if you're not the right fit for us or we're not the right fit for you, I'm completely okay with that. And now I know some businesses have hard goods and they've had to finance something. You got to do that. But, there's this whole thing out there, to hit on a point from earlier, about this concept of nobody can find good people. You hear that a lot. I don't think that's true, because we went from 0, if you include myself, to 4 or 5 people in a very quick period of time. Excellent people, by the way. They're all passionate, all excited, all driven, talented. And I'm even doing, I pay them as contractors, right? Like, that's how I pay them. We don't have health benefits, and they still want to come work with me because they see the passion, they see the dreams that can come true for them. Then there'll be a company out there with 100 employees that can't find one person to hire. Well, it's not because there's no good people out there. We just had the Great Resignation. So think about what you're saying when people say that. So there's more people than ever that left their job, but yet you can't find anyone. It's probably not that there's no good people. They don't want to work for you. So then the question is, are you emotionally intelligent enough to sit back and think, well, what is it about me or my culture or my organization? You should have 100 recruiters within your organization if you're running a really good, strong company, because everyone should be so excited about it. They're telling their friends and family to come work there. And so I really get worn out hearing that from everybody, that they can't find any good people. There's great people everywhere. You don't know how to ignite it within them, and you don't know how to attract them, because maybe the only reason people are working for you is because you have a nasty contract or non-compete or something like that. Well, that isn't really the purpose of business. And if that's the only way you can hold people, then it's probably not going to be successful in the long run.
I believe that too. Self-reflection though, right? Self-reflection, self-awareness, other awareness, and those are all components of emotional intelligence. And that is critical, I think, for culture and to keep people happy, because we can have people come in and apply and get people in the door, but are they happy? Do they feel valued? I mean, we're finding more and more research is showing us it's not necessarily about how much money people are making, as long as they make a living and a comfortable living. It's not about that. It's about feeling valued, feeling like they add something to the organization.
67% of people, this is a stat from about a year ago, but 67% of employees aren't satisfied in their current position. So my question would be to somebody with 100 employees, just an average company, who are the 67? And either A, you need to get them on board, or B, you need to let them go, because it's not helping you to hold back people. And so like a theory of mine is, let's just say a position on average would pay $50,000. And so what people will do is they'll go out and they'll hire 2 people for 50 grand. And then those 2 people will get together and gossip and be mediocre, and all these things will happen. I would rather pay somebody 65 grand for that $50,000 a year job. And let's say if the 2 that are getting paid 50 are busy and productive, we'll call them like 7s out of 10s, like 70% of the time. So you're getting 1.4 employees out of the 2, you know what I mean? With all the wasted energy and motion.
Sure.
But they're not happy. They're not a happy 1.4. What if I pay someone 65? I get the best of the best. And guess what? They go above and beyond. They're great. They're amazing. They're productive. They're an evangelist for the organization. I can probably actually get more out of the 1 person for 65 than they're getting out of the 2 people for 100. And they're happy and pleasant, and we're getting more accomplished.
Exactly. And that's what you look for. So how do you find people like that?
Well, they're all over. I mean, so you'll hear leaders say things like, well, the average is making $18 an hour. We pay 19. Okay. So you want like 1 notch above average, but yet you want amazing people. I would almost challenge somebody. Now, I understand math and business models and financials, and it'd be hard if you just did it in one position to like figure this whole formula out after you've already started. But take a job that pays $20 an hour. Go post today that you're going to pay 30 for that same job, or call people that are qualified. There's some things you do with automation too to recruit them. And I bet the quality of candidate goes way up. Or if it's a $100,000 position, look at paying 150 for it, or, as an example. I bet you're going to get the best of the best for that position. And then they're happy, they're motivated. I know it's not all about money, but that concept is there. But if you're trying to get a $100,000 position filled for 80, which is what a lot of business leaders try to do, well, why did you think you were going to get the best of the best?
That's a valid point. That's a really good question.
And we're just using the money side, but pretend it's the culture, pretend it's the work hour, whatever it is that they're looking for. Give them more than they would expect, and see who you end up recruiting.
And something else that you said earlier about the recruiting that you've done for your business in particular, and I know that you've done this with other organizations as well prior to going out on your own, finding out what motivates people. Are they intrinsically motivated, extrinsically motivated? And, you spoke to that. What are your goals? Do they align? Like, do we fit in that? I'm not going to bring you on board if that's not what is going to work best for you. And so speaking of that, how do you figure out what motivates people?
Well, if they're writing down their goals, they'll just tell you. It's like a customer telling you exactly what to do to sell.
Yeah,
them.
but I get goals. I get clients that bring in goals, and then it's kind of like a lot of fluff. I have to pick through it, get to the bottom of it.
Well, if you're writing them down every day, though, what happens is they have to reflect on them, and they start to
every day, yeah.
And they start to realize which ones maybe aren't as important and which ones they're really sticking to and holding on to. Those are the ones that are really bringing the bang for the buck. I think most people just want to be heard. They want to be treated with respect. They want to feel valued. Everybody wants to feel valued. And I don't mean feel valued like, hey, I gave you a raise. I mean like their opinion matters. They're valued in the organization. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And
yes.
so
I have the same belief system. I think people really need to be heard and felt.
It's kind of like if you're in a relationship and you send flowers on Valentine's Day, it's expected. So if you give someone a trophy at the all-company meeting at the end of the year, that's kind of expected. It's the random thank yous. It's the random things you do throughout the year that will mean more to them. So go give an employee $500 or go recognize them out of nowhere. Take them somewhere for a one-on-one coffee. I've learned over my career, if you get people onto neutral ground, they become a lot more open and will share a lot with you. So I always try to take employees out to like a coffee or lunch or something, because it's a different environment than in the office. Because just from a physiological standpoint, if I'm behind the desk and you're over there and I'm in a higher chair than you, you're probably not opening up. Not the way you would if we were out on neutral ground.
So developing and fostering and building relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Really, truly know them.
What? I'm sorry.
Yeah, really truly know the people.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to switch gears here for a minute because I know you are an avid reader, and I'm curious if you can give us top 2 or 3 books that have helped change and mold your mindset.
Well, I think one of the best books for changing your mindset is probably Grant Cardone's 10X rule. Mm-hmm. So he goes into the theory of like big goals and massive action, etc. So that's a great one. One book that I go to, I don't know if it's Mastering the Mindset, but I still love Dale Carnegie and just how to communicate with people. It's so easy when you're a driver and you're high energy to lose track of communication basics. And every time I go through that book, it kind of slows me down or reminds me a little bit again. And I think that always helps communication go much better. Mm-hmm. And as far as big mindset stuff, I do a lot of business books that are like somewhat tactical and sales and those sort of things. Not as much of the mindset. Most of that's usually like podcasts or videos, but I'd probably say the 10X rule. That's the one that changed me the most to think bigger, to execute.
Actually, I love your story about that one. Would you mind sharing it?
Which story are you looking for specifically?
The one about how it was like this book that somebody gave you. Isn't this the book that somebody gave you to read? And then you just kind of read it, and then you bought it for all your employees.
Yeah. So this is a business example too. But so I found this book maybe 2015 or so. Bought it on Audible for $9. Listened to it, and I thought, well, this is great. So I gave it to all my employees, and they went through it. One of my employees actually bought another one of the books. The team there at Cardone reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to get on this Cardone University? And I was like, no. But eventually I took their demo and did it. And then years later, they've literally gotten millions and millions of dollars of business through me, my referrals, and some other ways that they've been able to monetize the relationship with me. And it all started with like a $9 Audible book. So you never know who in your customer base is going to be your raving fan. And most of us would be very happy if we had just a couple raving fans that way, right? But the thing too is, I really felt like it made an impact. Mm-hmm. Right? They weren't just selling a widget. It was something that I believed in and I felt like made an impact. And so I really took it on and became an evangelist for it. And you need that. There's a few other lessons here, but direct selling isn't as easy as someone else referring you in, because then you're like 70% down the buying cycle. And that's kind of the concept of some of the stuff that Quantum does too, is like, how do you get people warmer before you actually try to put the sell on them?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And all of it, we trust people. So when we trust somebody and I get a referral, even for a haircut, who should I go to for a haircut? If I like somebody's hair and they recommend somebody, I'm going to go to that person. So we really do take people that we trust. We take their opinion as fact and weigh it very heavily.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it very much. Yeah. You are in warm weather right now. I'm jealous.
75. I'm looking at the mountains. The sun's out.
Oh, stop.
I don't know. Maybe I'll hit the pool after this, finish out the workday over at the pool. We'll see.
But rounding it out, like there were a lot of sacrifices that you've made to be able to do this and live this life that you're living now. And I know we talk frequently, but it's something you're very grateful for. It's something your gratitude is very high for it. And you're very happy with the decisions that you've made.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I would tell anybody that's listening is make the sacrifice sooner, because nothing's going to feel better. And all the other things that you're worried about are going to take care of themselves. Because even if you failed and you went bankrupt or whatever you think the worst case scenario is that you can come up with in your head, what you're going to learn and who you're going to meet and the growth that you're going to have, you would pop right back up. So if you're leaving a $100,000 a year job to go do your own thing, you can replace that $100,000 a year job over and over again, especially after you pick up all the skills and mindset that you'll get from doing your own business for a while.
Yep. Failure is absolutely the biggest opportunity sometimes we all get to experience.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Lift Your Future. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a review. We'll see you next week.